Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something really intense. It's a piece of literature that people say isn't just a book. It's, well, an experience that actually changes how you see things. We've looked at some fascinating reviews and analysis of Georges Bataille's Story of the Eye, and our mission today really is to unpack this incredibly audacious work. Why do people whisper about it? Why does it mess with our ideas about desire, the body? Sanity even, and, why do people say you're never quite the same after reading it?
Yeah, it's striking how the source material we looked at just immediately sets this up as something completely beyond normal fiction. They actually call it arguably the most dangerous erotic novel ever written, which is quite a claim.
Wow, well,
So we're going to dig into why that label might actually be accurate and what Bataille was really trying to get at.
okay, let's unpack that. Who was the mind behind this really unsettling creation? Georges Bataille, French intellectual, philosopher, and this is the bit that always gets me, a librarian.
Right. Seems incongruous.
Totally. And our sources suggest he saw the erotic not just as, pleasure, but as
hmm
sacred transgression. That seems like a contradiction.
It does on the surface.
Tied to death, violence, the sacred. How can something be sacred and transgressive in that way? What does that even mean?
Well, that's the core of Bataille, isn't it? For
Mhm.
him, breaking taboos wasn't just about being shocking. It was a way, maybe the only way, to really confront our deepest fears, our rawest desires. He talked about pushing past the rational, the comfortable, into what he called sovereignty, like a
Yeah.
pure, unfiltered experience of being. And that, for him, was almost a kind of spiritual journey through the forbidden.
Huh. So the transgression is the sacred act, in a way.
In a very specific Bataillean way, yes. And you really see his background feeding into this, his surrealist connections, his reading of Nietzsche, Freud.
Right, you mentioned that. How exactly did figures like Nietzsche and Freud shape this?
Well, Bataille was definitely part of that surrealist movement, using dream logic,
Mhm.
non-rational imagery to get at the subconscious. And Nietzsche's attack on conventional morality, Freud's digging into hidden, often pretty dark desires.
Mhm.
That's all fuel for Bataille. It helps explain why Story of the Eye, which he published under a pseudonym back in 1928, why it just wasn't meant to be comfortable reading.
Right.
It's a deliberate dive into shock, into symbolism. It's meant to provoke you, to kind of throw you off balance.
So, okay, he's got this radical philosophy. How does he actually put that into a story? Because the sources are pretty clear it's not your standard novel plot.
No, not at all. Exactly. There's a sort of thin narrative thread, but really
Hmm.
the story is more a vehicle for these extreme explorations. It follows two teenagers, the narrator, who's unnamed, and his lover, Simone. And they just push their sexual experiences further and further into, well, extreme, surreal, often horrifying places.
And they bring others into it.
Yeah, there's Marcel, who's described as quite shy. They sort of seduce her into their world. And later, this older character, Sir Edmund, a libertine,
Mm.
who joins what they call their orgiastic pilgrimage.
Pilgrimage. Wow. And the way their journey moves, it's described as going from, like, bedrooms to cathedrals,
Oh,
from
yeah.
milk to blood.
Exactly, from ecstasy to actual madness. And objects take on this huge symbolic weight, especially as we'll get into the eye.
Mm-hmm.
The analysis we read makes it super clear. This isn't just pornography. It
Wow.
aims to be poetic, absurd, and, yeah, deeply disturbing. It's all about pushing boundaries, not just telling a story A to B.
Okay, so beyond the graphic stuff, it's operating on this deeper symbolic level. What's Bataille really trying to say with all this orgy of symbolism, as one source put it? Let's start with the eye itself. It's literally everywhere, right? Actual eyes, but also eggs, testicles, the sun. Even God, a priest's eye removed during some kind of ritual.
Yeah, the eye is just multifaceted for Bataille. It's the obvious gateway to perception, how we see the world, but it's also about extreme vulnerability, a window into inner badness, maybe.
So what does it mean to see in Bataille's world? Is it like seeing too much drives you mad?
That's definitely part of it. It suggests that really experiencing existence without filters might lead you to some terrifying places, or even like a dissolution of your own self.
And nothing seems off limits. Religion, death, bodily fluids, it's all in there. Now, the sources say it's more profound than just shock value, but I can hear listeners thinking, come on, isn't this just trying to be provocative, just sensationalism? How do we separate that from philosophical rebellion?
That's a really fair question.
Yeah.
And it's a line Bataille himself kind of walked. But the argument is, it's not just about pushing buttons. It's a very deliberate attempt to take apart our social structures, our taboos.
Yeah.
He genuinely seemed to believe that only by violating those taboos, by going there, could we confront what existence is fundamentally about beyond all the rules we build up. It's an exploration of freedom, but also the terrifying nature of limits or the lack of them.
And that links into this idea of sex and death being intertwined. The review mentioned every orgasm is a little death, taken very literally.
Oh, yeah. It's not just a metaphor in this book. Sex mirrors death, and sometimes it directly leads to it.
So the climax isn't just physical.
No, it's almost apocalyptic in Bataille's view. It's a shattering of the self, a complete breakdown of boundaries. Desire becomes so extreme, it sort of touches the void, touches the ultimate end. If you look at the bigger picture, he's portraying sex as, yeah, apocalypse, but also as sacred sacrifice, even as a form of philosophy itself. It completely challenges our usual ideas about pleasure, consequence. It dissolves the individual into something universal and often, yeah, terrifying.
Okay, we absolutely need to be clear here. Story of the Eye is not for the faint of heart. Not for most people, probably. The sources confirm it's got incredibly explicit stuff. Acts involving minors, animals, the dead. I mean, by today's standards, just reading the descriptions, these things cross lines that are unthinkable, even criminal if taken literally.
Absolutely. It's crucial to state that up front.
So given that, why isn't a book like this just, banned everywhere, forgotten?
And that question gets right to the heart of why it's still discussed, why it has literary value despite the content. It's not pornography. That's the key distinction the analysis makes. It's not designed to arouse in a simple way.
Okay.
It's designed to confront. Bataille isn't like celebrating these acts. He's using them almost like a surgeon's tools to dissect the absolute extremes of human experience.
Yeah.
That messy, horrifying place where sex meets violence, where desire twists into self-destruction.
Right.
Reading it is described quite aptly, I think, as being trapped in someone else's nightmare, with the really unsettling possibility that you might recognize parts of it as your own.
Wow, so it's about probing the psyche, not stimulating the body.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the psychological side. You mentioned the narrator is unreliable. The whole thing reads like a fever dream, a hallucination.
Yeah, and that unreliability opens it up to so many interpretations, which is probably why scholars keep coming back to it. Some read it almost as Bataille's personal confession, like he's purging his own demons onto the page. Others see it as a classic surrealist text, a puzzle box of symbols attacking bourgeois values. Family, church, order, all of that.
Okay.
And then there are interpretations that view it more psychologically, perhaps, as a dark fantasy spun by a young boy trying to process some kind of trauma through extreme sexual metaphor.
So it's deliberately ambiguous.
Very much so. That openness is what makes it literary, what keeps the discussion going and feels like gender theory, psychoanalysis.
So, okay. If someone is considering reading this, how should they even approach it? You definitely can't read it like, a regular novel.
No, absolutely not. The advice from the sources we looked at is interesting. Treat it more like a ritual or just an experience you submit to. Allow yourself to be disturbed. Allow yourself to feel repulsed, even disgusted, because those reactions, that's part of the point Bataille is making.
Like it's meant to provoke that.
Exactly. It forces you to ask yourself, okay, why am I reacting this way? To really examine your own boundaries, what society has taught you is acceptable or unacceptable, what you're supposed to hide away. It makes you wonder, maybe you flinch hard at this, but I don't know, maybe not so much at graphic violence in a war movie. He's deliberately challenging those learned responses, those hierarchies of shock.
That's a really interesting point. Despite all this, or maybe, like you say, because of it, the books had a huge impact.
Immense, yeah.
It influenced writers like Jean Genet, philosophers like Foucault, even filmmakers. Gaspar Noé comes to mind.
Definitely.
And it's studied constantly in academia, gender studies, surrealism, psychoanalysis. It's one of the most cited banned books, which is kind of ironic.
It is.
Yeah.
And that legacy, I think, really underlines the point that if you engage with it seriously, and it is a serious engagement, you see, it's not just about sex. It becomes this profound, deeply uncomfortable exploration of everything we're kind of afraid to articulate, all the messy, dark stuff under the surface. It's really a testament to how literature can push boundaries, force us to look at things we'd rather ignore, uncomfortable truths.
So wrapping this up, should you, the listener, read Story of the Eye? The sources are pretty unanimous, only if you feel genuinely prepared for it. Know what you're getting into. This book, it promises to strip away your comforts. It will likely disgust you. And paradoxically, it might even seduce you in a strange way. It forces you to question what desire really is at its limits.
If you dare, and that's a genuine if you dare, it might just open your eyes, and probably not just the ones in your skull.